Hey guys, I don't normally post here except to poke fun at people and bump interesting threads, but something happened to me yesterday that I need to talk about. Be me, living with folks in town near Chicago, not a complete need yet. Do contract work as a network technician while studying at the local college. Mom works for a small telephone and internet company as a secretary. Small as in like 4 people. I know the owner pretty well. He'll often hire me for jobs. Nice guy. Get a call on Tuesday. They're moving to a different office nearby and need some networking gear organized and put into a new storage unit tomorrow. It's paid and I have nothing better to do since chickenpox is taking all my work away. I agree. Next day. It's raining. Get a call and boss man suggests I wait for it to let up so the boxes don't get soaked. Wait a while. Rain lets up a bit. I head out, get there and start loading boxes into my mom's Ford since it's bigger than my car. Take them to storage unit and get them nice and organized. Storage complex is between highway and about an acre of forested area. I worked at UPS for 2 years. This is nothing. Make a few runs. Unit is looking nice pick related. Took around second run. While partway through with my third, the rain picks up like crazy. It had been raining all day and we'd been getting flooding, but this was really heavy. Can't get boxes from my car to the unit in this rain, so I get comfy inside the unit, put on some jazz, Don't Judge Me, and start working on fixing a MacBook for another client. Work for about 2 hours while I wait for the rain to clear up. Cozy. GG. It just keeps getting worse. It's not very cold though, and only about 3 in the afternoon, so I'm fine hanging out. I finished with the Mac a while ago, and am now just chilling. Then I start hearing smashing from nearby. Sounds like something hitting metal. Car crash on the nearby highway? No, it's coming from the other direction. I really don't want to go out and get wet. No clue why the image is upside down. Doesn't look like that in paint. Here's a screenshot of the image, I guess. Whatever. Some hole probably dropped something. This is a public area like 200 feet from a busy highway. It's raining, but it's still the middle of the day, and I even saw other people earlier. Zero fear. Keep working. Keep hearing various banging noises. I'm going to feel like a real jerk if I find out tomorrow that someone was hurt out there, and I didn't bother checking. Damn it, fine. I'll go check. Rain has let up a bit, but it's still pouring. Head out, round corner, looking for noise. Notice massive hole in the fence leading to the little forest area. See something white moving near a dumpster by a fence. Should be wearing glasses, but I lost them a month ago and haven't bought new ones because poor. Zoomed in enhanced. Squint. Spend 1/100th of a second thinking, is that a big garbage bag under the dumpster? That's not a garbage bag. Garbage bags don't have arms. They don't click either. Pick related. It's a crappy map of the area. Now let me make something clear. I've read Skinwalker and Innawoods stories on here for a long time and know all the tropes. This had none of them. It was the middle of the day. I'm not in some deep forest or ancient tunnel or abandoned farmhouse. I'm in the middle of a small town and can hear traffic on the highway just 300 feet away. I didn't smell any rotting blood or stop hearing the wind or anything. I didn't feel a sense of unease or nervous at all. This was not a setting I expected horror in. Still not convinced I'm in danger. Just confused. Try and get a closer look at the thing, maybe 150 feet away from it. Can see what looks like a big bag of skin under there, but there's these massive white spikes poking out from under it. Keep hearing clicking noises. Hello? Who's that? Immediately regret making yelling out. Why would I do that? This is the kind of thing I get mad at people in other green texts for doing. Typewriter garbage bag thing must have heard me. Something big squeezes out from underneath the dumpster. Massive pile of skin and spiky bits, at least 4 feet tall. It stands up. It is now taller than me. At least 6'5". It looks like if you took a spider, reversed its body, made it pale white, and slapped big pointy arms on it. It has a pointy and angular body kind of like a crayfish or spider, but clearly fleshy instead of hard except for the tips of its arms or legs. Face is smooth and flat except for a slit on each side of its head and a recession at the bottom full of little moving things. Didn't get a good look. I think they looked like crayfish mouth parts. Even from where I am, I can tell it's covered in tons of scratches and bruises. Creature is clearly not happy. It doesn't seem to mind the rain, but every time there's thunder, it flinches hard. Also seems to be spitting up a large amount of water out of its mouth. Imagine it in the corner scene in Pig. You can kind of see the tom fence, but the dumpster was moved. I can hear it freaking clicking louder now. Not like a bat or dolphin though. It sounded more like a typewriter or someone flicking a lighter. Start freaking out internally. This is not possible. I live in a decently sized city. There's no forests or swamps or deserts for whatever this is to hide in. The forest nearby is like an acre wide. You would be able to see through it if not for the little hill in the middle. It doesn't give a damn if it's possible. It's moving towards me. Thankfully, it doesn't seem very fast. Quickly think, I don't know what this is. I have no weapons and my car is 100 feet away around the corner. I don't know how fast or dangerous this thing is either. Start slowly backing away. Too scared to let it out of my sight. Yelling progressively louder, hoping someone will hear me. Hello? Hello, help? Anyone help, please? It starts moving faster, clicking more rapidly. It moved kind of like a crab with a six, I think legs at the bottom, moving it around while the two arm things were raised up like claws. Try to move faster to get away, but I'm still too terrified to turn away from it. End up awkwardly backwards running into a concrete bollard and messing up my back. It's moving really quick now. It's about 20 feet away from me. Absolutely terrified, but I grab a loose piece of asphalt and get ready to try and smash it in the weird mouth parts. Suddenly, loud truck horn on the highway nearby. It starts flinching again. Take my chance to cower it out. Throw rock at its head, miss, and haul ass away. Eventually reach the row of storage units my car is in. Get in, start the engine, peel the hell out. Get to storage complex. No time for codes. Instead, I do something incredibly stupid. Hop out of my car, scale the fence, and start running across the busy highway into a freaking graveyard. Pick mostly unrelated. Funny car I saw there earlier that day. So this is where most of the excitement ends. Instead of turning into another Greentext, the graveyard was fine. I ran to the nearby church. A little parish office lady let me in and let me use her phone to call the police. Obviously, I didn't tell them I saw a freaking skin spider monster, but someone with guns needs to get in there ASAP. Tell them I saw a shifty-looking man waving a pistol around at the self-storage center. I waited at the chapel for one to arrive and thanked the old lady. The cop asked me some questions and I just gave vague answers. Didn't need to lie about screwing up my back by backing into a concrete bollard though. Apparently cops found nothing there. There was another guy in the storage area at the time who heard me scream but wasn't able to find me before I ran out of there. I'm not an artist, but I tried to draw what I saw. Sorry for the low quality. I should mention, I had to go back there today. No rain, was nice and sunny, but even though I reported an armed and dangerous homeless man to the police, my mom still wanted the work done. If I wasn't going to do it, she was, and I'm not sending my own mother to go get eaten by a typewriter skin spider, so I tell her I'll go and finish the job. I do, and it was uneventful. I saw one cop there keeping a lookout who nearly jumped out of his skin when I said hello, but said nothing was wrong. I took a couple pics for you guys and got the hell out. No, I'm not going to go and investigate the area. I'm not retarded. All I had to write on for the timestamp was gloves because recent flu. White, no eyes, echolocation, doesn't like loud noises. That's a freaking cave monster. Where on your map did you forget to draw the opening to the Hell Cave? Sounds like a demon. Pretty rare to see ones like that. Definitely echolocation. You said there was no smell? No caves. Well, I say no caves, but back when I was around 5, I was friends with an older boy named Joey who made offhand mentions to a damn sick cave somewhere nearby. I thought he was full of crap because this is the same Joey who climbed into the tree in my backyard and started talking to convince my dumb self I had a magic talking tree. I'd ask him for details, but about 15 years ago he got into some problems with drugs, broke into my garage to steal my dad's tools, and then him and his family moved away a few months later. No smell. It was raining pretty hard though, and I doubt I would have been able to smell much anyways. Plus, it never got closer than about 25 feet. Theory time. It lives in a cave somewhere in that acre of forest. It's clearly flexible, seeing as despite being over 6 feet tall, it's able to squeeze under a dumpster that's probably only a few inches off the ground. Because of this, the entrance to its cave is probably only a couple feet wide. Small enough for people to miss. It never comes out because clearly it's adapted to life underground, and if it were to come out, people would have seen it by now considering how small the area is. During the heavy rain, its cave flooded, and it was forced to escape. That's most likely where it got all its bruises and cuts from. Once it got to the surface, it started trying to hide under something, hence the dumpster. Since it uses echolocation, it can't detect anything very well in the rain, which is why it didn't hear you until you yelled at it. As you were yelling for help, it could get a better and better sense of where you were, so that's why it went faster. After the truck horn stunned it, and you ran off, the sirens of the police probably scared it back into the forested area. How they didn't find it there if they checked is beyond me. But if the rain has stopped now and the water receded, then it's probably back in its cave now.
Depressing ending. Sorry for this horrid and long OC. When my wife suggested taking the kids on a camping trip, I was a little surprised by the idea, I admit. She wasn't really one for outdoors activities, though we both had grown up in the country our entire lives. And the idea of her dealing with the sweltering heat and trying to help put up the tent made me chuckle to myself. Teasingly, I asked if she was up for the challenge, and she looked as if she were reconsidering. However, when our kids begged and pleaded with her, she relented. After all, someone should go camping at least once in their lives, she said. We packed our gear and supplies into the car after Sarah and Ethan had been let out of school on Friday, planning on coming back on Sunday afternoon. The children were buzzing with excitement, and we all played I Spy as we drove along to our destination. Every now and then, one of the kids would ask if we were there yet, and jokingly I would say, "Afraid we'll get lost?" Finally, at 5:15, we arrived at the camping grounds. As we drove to the lot we had rented, we could see a few families setting up, but not as many as we had expected. That's a good thing, I smiled to Anna. The lake won't be as crowded. The day went by relatively smoothly. After we had unpacked and I had set up the tent, we changed the kids into their swimming clothes and took them to the lake nearby. Anna had packed a small cooler full of drinks and food, intending to have a sort of picnic on the beach for dinner. There were 2 other families there, though their children seemed older than Sarah and Ethan, who were only 7 and 5 respectively. They didn't seem to be put out by this. They had always had fun with each other. By 6, more people began crowding the beach, splashes and laughter echoing through the forest. "Daddy," Sarah called in delight as she ran up to me. I made a new friend. She was pointing out to the lake, though I saw nothing. Sarah had a rather active imagination, so I assumed it was one of her numerous imaginary friends. "Really?" I played along. "What's their name?" "Maddie," Sarah replied matter-of-factly. "She said she's a mermaid." "A mermaid, huh?" I grinned, putting on a show of looking for her. "I don't see her." Sarah shook her head. "Oh no, she says she's afraid of grown-ups. She hides from them in the water." That struck me as a bit odd. Out of all the friends she had made up, there was never one who feared adults. Of course, I just shrugged it off as a sort of game Sarah was playing since she had no one else her age to play with. Well, you tell her if she's hungry, she can come eat with us, I offered as I ruffled Sarah's hair. She beamed up at me before splashing back into the water near the small pier where the older kids were jumping off. I watched for a moment as she talked rather animatedly to something unseen near one of the legs of the pier, pointing back at me. I gave a wave, still playing along, though there was a nagging feeling in the back of my head that I couldn't shake nor place. It's just your imagination, I rationalized. Or Sarah's, rather. That made me chuckle. Since it was nearing the end of May, the sun set pretty late, so we had plenty of time to kill before we needed to get back to the campsite. Around 7, Anna wrangled the kids up for dinner, and we sat at one of the unused picnic tables, where Sarah was enthusiastically recounting her adventures with Maddie to us. She has other friends, too. All of them are mermaids, Sarah chirped, eyes bright. I told Maddie and her friends that they could eat with us, but she didn't wanna. She frowned a little at this, and Anna just laughed. Why didn't they want to eat with us? She asked. Oh, they're scared of the grown-ups, Sarah said again. They say that grown-ups are mean. But I told Maddie that Daddy and Mommy aren't mean. She nodded, as if agreeing with herself, and I smiled, though slightly uneasy by how much Sarah could tell us about Maddie. Usually, when she would make up imaginary friends, they would be based off the cartoons she watched. The girls she was describing fit none of the characters on the shows we let Sarah watch. As the sun began to set, we walked back to camp, and as Anna watched the children, I went out to collect some firewood. As I returned, I noticed that a few adults had gathered in our area, and I found myself, once again, uneasy for no real reason. However, as I dumped the firewood down, Anna motioned for me to come over into the group. Off to the side, Sarah and Ethan were busy chasing each other. Honey, you didn't see anyone out in the woods, did you? She asked in hushed tones, and I blinked, looking around at the 3 or 4 others. One of the women looked pale, almost scared, and the others' faces were tight with worry. No, I frowned. What happened? My son, the pale woman gasped. He's about 10. He was playing with his older brothers near the lake an hour ago when I last saw them. My oldest boys went to use the bathroom, but when they got back, She choked off with a muffled sob, and a man, who I assumed was her husband, squeezed her hand tightly. They were only gone for a few minutes, the man explained. When they got back, they couldn't find him. There were a few other families on the beach, but they didn't see anything. I found myself glancing back at Sarah and Ethan, my stomach tight with fear at the idea of losing them. Then I thought of Maddie, Sarah's friend, the mermaid who had other mermaid friends, the girl who was afraid of adults and seemed only comfortable talking to children. Was she really imaginary? I had to stop myself from shaking my head. Of course, she wasn't real, nor were her friends. They were all just of Sarah's imagination. Is there anything we can do? I asked, and the man shook his head. We have a few of the older kids, the teenagers, and some other of my friends looking for him. I think he may just have gotten lost out in the woods. We're planning on calling the police if we don't find anything within the hour. Please, if you see anything, let us know. There was a heavy note of desperation in his voice, and I couldn't even imagine what they were going through. Of course, Anna soothed. After the family had left, Anna turned to me, lips pressed tightly together. We should leave. Now? I frowned, checking my watch. It's a 4-hour trip back, Anna. If we leave now, we'll be getting in the door by 1 at the earliest. She crossed her arms tightly over her chest, though she seemed to be thinking over my words. Look, we'll get the kids up early tomorrow and pack up then. How's that? Nothing's going to happen, honey. I'm sure the kid just got lost looking for his brothers. They'll find him, I soothed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. All right, she agreed with some reluctance. At 10, we gathered Ethan and Sarah into the tent so we could sleep, and that's when I broke the news that we had to leave early. How come? They protested immediately. Mommy's feeling a little sick, Anna answered gently, pushing a few curls from Ethan's forehead as she tucked him into the sleeping bag next to hers. Ah, Sarah whined. Can I at least say goodbye to Maddie? Anna and I exchanged looks before I shook my head slowly. No, honey, but we can come back and see her another time. How's that? This seemed to placate Sarah, and soon enough, she and Ethan were drifting off to sleep. I don't know when I had fallen asleep. I was on edge after the news of the missing boy, listening to every snap and crunch from the woods and wondering if that was him or if it was something else. But I guess I had, because I was coming to when I heard a familiar giggle outside of my tent. Disoriented and groggy, I looked around, and it took a moment to realize I wasn't in my home. There was a soft voice, another giggle, though it sounded more distant. Alarmed, I sat up, reaching out to where Sarah and Ethan should be between Anna and I, and finding 2 empty sleeping bags. "Sarah! Ethan!" I called, immediately getting to my feet and grabbing my flashlight. "What's wrong?" came Anna's voice, sharp with fear. "Sarah and Ethan, they're gone." I fumbled with the zipper on the tent, cursing under my breath. "Kids!" I yelled as Anna called for them, trying to keep the hysteria from her voice. "Where could they have gone?" she snapped as I flashed my light around the campsite, finding nothing. The fear we were feeling was palpable, almost choking me, but I swallowed it back, resolving myself on finding them. "I don't know, I don't." And then suddenly it struck me. The lake. Sarah must be going to say goodbye to Maddie, taking Ethan with her. "The lake!" I yelled, a little too loudly, and took off as fast as my legs would carry me, hollering for my children, following the haunting, childish laughter. The sound made the hairs on my arms stand up, a shiver run through me, even though it was summer. As I ran onto the beach, I moved my flashlight all around the bank before it finally landed on the pier. There, just near one of the legs, were Sarah and Ethan, bent over and talking to something I couldn't see. "Sarah, Ethan," I yelled, dashing for the pier, which was on the other side of the beach from where I was standing. "Get out of there!" Now, I tried to keep the anger, the fear from my voice, not wanting to scare them. I could see Sarah looking up at me with surprise, and she was raising her hand up to wave at me when I saw a girl, a few years older than Sarah, slowly rising out of the water. "Run!" I screamed as I moved faster than I thought possible. "Get out of the water!" "It's okay," Sarah was shouting back. "It's just Maddie." Her words were cut off by a horrible, gurgling sound as she was pulled into the water by the figure. I let out a howl of rage as I splashed into the water, grabbing Ethan with one hand as the other dove at the spot where I had last seen Anna. "Mark!" Anna was screaming my name as she, and what sounded like a few others, splashed into the water. "Mark, where's Sarah?" "Take Ethan." I shoved the now hysterical boy into her arms as I dove beneath the water, holding the flashlight in my mouth. Frantically, I searched in the dark, murky water for a sign of Sarah. A flash, a glimpse. I only surfaced when I felt like my lungs were going to explode, and immediately I was back under, swimming deeper, further, ignoring the frantic voices from the surface. There was a flash of blonde hair, and foolishly, I called out Sarah's name. The flashlight dropped, slowly floating to the bottom, and there, it illuminated something I would never wish upon anyone, even an enemy. Dozens of bodies, all in various forms of decay, all of them children. I let out a terrified scream, blinded by the bubbles, and began kicking my way to the surface. I needed to get air. I needed to tell the others what I had found. But just as I began swimming, I felt something wrap around my ankle. My immediate reaction was to kick out, but I knew with the way the water made any movement sluggish, it wouldn't work. Still, I reacted on instinct, kicking and fighting my way for the surface when a familiar voice whispered in my ear, soft and sweet, "I spy a mermaid, Daddy." The end.
I've got Maori native New Zealander blood, and I went to a family gathering around Christmas when I was younger, the family being on my mother's side, where I get the Maori blood from. This gathering was way up in North New Zealand, which is mostly just Maori land and is rural as all hell. No lie, as me and my family pull into the farm, it's being held on. There's a boar on a spit some of the uncle's adults were just called aunties and uncles had caught earlier in the day using spears and knives. Anyway, there's a creek or stream that runs through the property, which the kids went down to and swam in most days. A lot of the time, we'd all let ourselves float down a while on inflatables or just by the current. At one point on the bank on the farm side was about 2 meters high or so, but there was a small ledge about halfway down that you could get down on from the top, but not the bottom. Me and 2 other boys reckoned it would be a brilliant idea to use that ledge for eeling. We told the adults, and they just shrugged and told us to knock ourselves out. So me and these 2 guys, we go to this ledge, a freaking bunch, using those handcasters pick-related and having fun chilling in this picturesque place, surrounded by rolling hills, green fields, and bushland. Us 3 boys even found a cool place further down the stream. No else went to where only we would hang. But then it got weird. A few times out swimming, all of the kids got a little anxious, and there was a couple of times we could swear we saw a figure standing on the far bank as we floated down the stream. It got to the point where me and the 2 guys were out eeling. We hadn't caught anything so far, which was weird because this stream should have been essentially untouched, and we saw a shadowy figure step out and walk towards us on the opposite bank, then begin walking across the water. Of course we shit ourselves and book it out of there. I remember being in complete terror. We told some of the older adults/elders about this, and they seemed a little concerned, even when they dismissed it as it was probably just the farmer from the next property. But unless that farmer was Jesus from the shadow realm, I didn't buy that shit. Anyway, us boys had only been eeling during daylight hours, and we wanted to go out at night because that's the best time to catch eels. One of the older cousins, early 20s, said he'd come along, and about 6 girls begged to come along too. So 10 or so people go out at night to catch some eels, all crammed onto this tiny ledge. We're there for a few hours, the girls complaining about being bored while us boys told them to stefu, worried they'll scare off the eels. That's when one of the girls gets a tug on her line. A tug that nearly pulled her off the ledge into the inky black waters beneath us. The older cousin grabs on and starts pulling the line. He's digging his feet in and struggling. Me and the other 2 boys grab on too, all trying to yank this line up, thinking we hit the jackpot. A couple minutes go by when we get some progress, slowly pulling the line in. One of the girls turned on a light, but that's all over the place because they're all screaming and freaking out and shit. But I noticed something long and really thick being pulled out of that water, with no indication of ending. An immense eel head eventually crests the ledge. This mother lover was huge, slightly thicker than the one in the picture and way longer. This thing is a meter out of the water and still looks to have most of its body in the water. But this fat bastard head is only over this ledge for a couple seconds when it lets out a damn roar, a little like a dog bark, but way freaking louder. And the line snaps as it slides back over the ledge and splashes into the water. We're stunned, and the older cousin tells us we all have to go back. So we walk back through the dark, a little disappointed, but also a little frightened. We swim in that creek, and a giant eel that freaking roars lives in it. When we got back, we told the elders our story excitedly, with them nodding and wowing, but they didn't seem surprised and actually seemed relieved, but told us we weren't to eel in the stream anymore. After that, we didn't see the Shadowman again, but not long before my family left whilst out swimming, I felt something thick and slimy slide past my leg when we were near the ledge. And looking back on it, I'm convinced as to what that eel was. In Maori legend or folklore, there is a creature called the Taniwha, pronounced Taniwha, which guards certain areas in nature or is a guardian for tribes and sub-tribes, in which case it is called a Kodiaki guardian. They generally take the form of sharks if in the sea, or an eel in freshwater. I think that the elders were concerned the Shadow Man was an evil spirit or ghost, and made an offering or summoned a Taniwha Kodiaki to protect us kids, and that eel was giving us a warning, specifically that bark. Other stories I've heard about Taniwha have mentioned the roaring sound as well. I want to go back there in a couple of years and try and make an offering, even if it isn't a Taniwha and is just an eel. That bastard has to be about 80 to 100 years to be that big and deserves respect.
I have a story, but it's more weird than spooky, I guess. Either way, There's this spot in South Florida suburbs where high school or college kids have bonfire parties. Even my parents knew about this place. B19 and friends want to have a bonfire. Get all of our supplies or drugs together. Get to the spot, and the damn fire refuses to start. Most of us have already started drinking, so the sober ones decide to go buy some lighter fluid. Chilling by the unlit pallets talking to some friends when we hear 1-2. Cat is meowing. Sounded like this. Link to deleted YouTube link, but that shit would not stop, and the meows were so close together it sounded like 2. Some rich girl starts crying and blubbering about the fact that it or they might be hurt. I seriously doubt that. My best friend Danny decides that he wants that wussy head and volunteers to go check it out, and a friend in ROTC, Ricky, decides to go with him, just in case. Screw that. This place be dark as hell. I decided to give them my mag light so they don't trip and fall into swamp water. Chill at the fire. Ricky comes running back, sweating bullets. Ask where Danny is. He says he doesn't know. He was behind him 1 minute, and the next he's gone. Oh my lord, these guys are idiots. Had to go back to look for him with Ricky and 2 other guys. After a half hour of searching through this damn thicket of trees pick-related, we find him clutching a stick. This dude looked traumatized, eyes wide open, hyperventilating, and completely unresponsive. We said his name over and over, but he wouldn't respond to any of us. Stops hyperventilating to say one thing: I want to go home. I've sobered up a bit, so I offered to take him home. The whole time we were searching, and the whole way back, that freaking meowing never stopped. Now, I figured that he got lost in the dark and got scared by us since he had been smoking pot with some of the girls. Get back to the bonfire, and they managed to start it. Let everyone know that I'm taking Dan home. They call him a wussy, a puff, etc. Get in the car. Awkward car ride, until I break the silence by asking him what happened. Doesn't respond. Keep asking. This dude won't talk to me. Pull over and insist that he tells me, because now I'm real freaking curious. He just looks at me, eyes puffy and red. After sitting there for 10 minutes, he finally says something. If you won't take me home, I'll just walk. This fucking guy, JPG. Take him home and drop him off. Get back to the bonfire. Tell everyone what happened. Meowing continued throughout the rest of the bonfire. Nothing else happened that night, but he never told us what happened to him. I asked him at a party a couple of months ago, and he threw or shattered a beer bottle against a wall and said something like, "Stop freaking asking me. I'm sick of everyone asking me. I never want to see those faces again." He then left immediately after, and I haven't talked to him since. Not spooky, I guess, but I'm still curious as to what he experienced that scared him so bad. A fake he didn't take any hallucinogenics, so I don't know what he meant by faces.
Another spook anon here. Glad to see there are quite a few stories from my area. The only friends I've ever had here who don't have /X worthy stories are the kind of people who just don't want that shit in their lives, and are either not too adventurous to begin with, or just pay selective inattention to all weirdness, or just decide that any such experiences are non-canonical to their lives within a month or 2 after the event. I have a fuck ton of weird stories that happened while I was in a car around here. First one, June 2005, 18 years old, riding passenger in a car with 2 other friends, just driving around town making absolute pricks of ourselves all night, as teen drivers are wont to do. Opposing traffic on one-ways, running reds, that sort of shit. 1 a.m. or so, we're by the courthouse. Can't remember which road. I was a Millwood fag and didn't have a spectacular grasp on the geography of the city of Spokane proper at the time. We're the only car in sight, not abnormal for that part of town that time of night. There is a fucking toll booth in the middle of the road. Anyone who lives in this area knows that we do not have that shit around here. Anywhere. And this is a toll booth just in the middle of a random urban road. 100% legit toll booth. No one could have just made something this complicated and put it up as a prank. There is a white man who looks to be in his mid-20s to early 30s operating the toll booth from window on the left of the barrier. elevated a considerable distance above the road to where it would actually be quite difficult for us to reach out and handed anything to him from the sedan we're in. He seems to be doing something in his little booth area, moving around, apparently focused on something in there. Gives no discernible fucks about our presence despite the fact that we are parked about 15 feet away from him. We just stare in confusion, trying to figure out why this thing is here. But conversation shifts quickly from "what the fuck is happening?" to "well, it clearly is happening. Now how can we avoid giving money to who or whatever this is?" After idling there for an awkwardly long time, the guy still does not so much as look at us. We slowly reverse back down the road and try to look for other ways to get to the area the toll booth is blocking. There do not appear to be any for some reason. Return to toll booth. Dude is still messing around with whatever in there, and now looking to the other side of the booth from where we are. Continue down the road perpendicular to the toll booth, reading to the right of it. Make the first right turn we see, and shortly ahead of us is a small area that may have been intended to be used as parking for something. We go into this area. Staring ahead, we can see the toll booth in the left of our field of vision. Straight ahead is part of the road on the other side of it we've been trying to reach. Decide, fuck it. We drive through one grassy of those grassy ditch things with a storm drain in it. Do it right and get through without getting stuck. Then link up with a larger parking lot on the other side, which leads directly out onto the road behind the toll booth. Drive off. Looking back at the thing, the dude is still just paying attention to something inside, and does not seem to give 1/10 of a shit that we've just made an illegal maneuver to bypass his toll booth. Doesn't so much as look at us. Never seen anything like that since, and I've never known anyone but us in that one particular incident to have seen something like it at all. Not really sure what to make of it, but I have a vague hunch it was probably for the best we didn't probe it too much or interact with whoever the hell the person was. Paranormal or just some weird guy who somehow managed to erect and disassemble that thing in the course of a single night. It definitely was not supposed to be there. Second story. I have actually warped around on roads while driving in the Spokane area, meaning just suddenly ending up somewhere impossibly far away while driving, with no direct route between where I just was and where I found myself. I know probably 10 or so other Spokane drivers who have experienced this shit often enough to where they're not particularly disturbed when it happens to them. I will recount the most interesting such experience I can recall, but there have been more than I can remember. Most of them are just sort of benign and fun experiences. I hate to say this, since I don't want to feed into the 1,000 steps mythos around here, it being an urban legend of which the hype far exceeds the delivery. But a majority of the times this has happened to me or to another driver I've been riding with, we have popped out on Government Way not too far from that cemetery. Anyway, the only time I can recall this experience being particularly spooky, February 2006. Actually with the same two people as in the above story, with the same person driving different car though. Going on an impromptu road trip across the state, but somehow get sucked into a pre-game driving adventure in the far south of town. It's a little before 10:30 p.m., if I remember right. End up at the intersection of Palouse and 57. Get onto Palouse. I have a feeling like something is definitely wrong, just like a weird, all-pervasive atmosphere of "I don't like you guys" from the area itself. Not life in danger level gut uneasiness, but definitely better keeping on this level. Drive down Palouse for a bit, but decide to turn around after just a few minutes as we've got a road trip to make and don't want to fuck around down here all night. Problem: we can't get off the road. No matter where we drive, we keep ending up at the same fucking spot on Palouse Highway, just a few hundred yards or so up from the intersection with 57. This is not the middle of nowhere. We are not lost or turned around. There are apartment complexes and grocery stores within walking distance from the spot we keep ending up in. We can see other cars back on 57, but we can't get off this fucking road. Every side road we try eventually spits us out right back at this spot. Even try getting back on 57, and it just leads to some weird turn that becomes Palouse and puts us back here. As this keeps happening, our attitude goes from "what the hell? Are we actually just this retarded?" to, well, this is kind of creepy, I guess, to just laughing our asses off every time we end up back at this spot, because it's so fucking ridiculous and just shouldn't be happening. We are stuck doing this shit until about midnight. Try a side road we've tried probably 3 times already, and within a minute, we end up in the place I circled in green on the map. The red circle shows Palau's Highway. Celebrate our defeat of the Palau's space warping monster, and go about our road trip. Have had one other time where I got spit out from Palau's into that same area in the green circle. I was driving by myself, and there was no lengthy detention preceding my ejection from the area that time. Third story, a rather short one. Summer 2007. Driving around late at night with friend who was driver, he's passenger this time, and previous 2 stories in the wooded areas you get to by going north on Forker, south of Mount Spokane. Car just suddenly shuts off out of nowhere. There's definitely an atmosphere of weirdness in the area, but that's pretty much true to some degree anywhere in the woods north of the river, according to me. Managed to get car started again, drive away. A week or so later, on a driving adventure with a different friend up there. He's driving. This friend has little patience for any stories of mine treading into paranormality. I mentioned casually that my car had randomly shut off up here last time I came through as we approached the spot where this happened. Friend is annoyed right away, assuming I'm going to take the discussion into a weird direction, even though I gave no indication that I believed this was a paranormal occurrence, and in fact, did not believe it was, since I had no real reason to, and was just mentioning the occurrence arbitrarily since the environment had cued the memory. Driving along as he starts making assumptions and talking shit, and his car shuts off in the same fucking spot mine had last week. And he knows this is the same spot based on what I told him. He starts freaking the fuck out, and I'm just laughing like an asshole in the passenger seat at him doing a 180 from, I am hardened skeptic and will not tolerate your to losing his shit over the smallest thing. Gets his car started again, immediately heads for Forker and takes it south back into the valley. He's freaked until we start seeing buildings and people again, at which point he works up the courage to write it off as an odd coincidence. Which it could well have been. But I still find the whole thing hilarious. It feels like something up there played a joke on this fucker just for me. Fourth story, spookiest in my opinion. Autumn 2006. In a span of 2 weeks, I have 3 creepy experiences while driving at night on Bigelow Gulch, of which the first was by far the most dramatic. On a night driving adventure with the one friend of mine who appeared in all of the 3 preceding stories. He is driving. Bigelow Gulch is basically divided into 2 parts, east and west of its intersection with Argonne. West Bigelow Gulch is kind of a curvy, wooded road that turns into a major arterial after a bit, while East Bigelow Gulch becomes this straight road going through a field, but the road undulates with a lot hills in a row. We're on the eastern part, stuck behind a very slow driver. Only 2 cars on the road. Friend complains about this, as he quite enjoys making night drives at 70 to 90 miles per hour on Bigelow Gulch, and this poof has the audacity to do the speed limit. I am also a bit disappointed by these circumstances. We are talking about going around this guy or something, but it's a bit risky with all the little hills, which sometimes even obscure visibility a bit if you're in a trough between 2 of them. Other driver passes over a hill, briefly fades from our sight as we're discussing the obstruction he poses to our tomfoolery. Friend suddenly grins and starts talking. No sooner does he open his mouth than I know what he is going to say, and know that it's true. He says not to worry, because the other car will not be there when we get over this hill. There is just this sudden shared certainty between that the other car will have disappeared. Friend's reaction is a total high on the strangeness. He's laughing about it. I'm more disturbed or creeped out. Get over the hill. The other guy is gone. This is straight road with no side roads and clear visibility in both directions into the surrounding field. There is no possibility of him having hidden anyway or sped off far ahead without us being able to see him from where we now are. There is no known way he could not be somewhere within our line of sight. Yet he is not. His car just fucking vanished. My friend still finds this hilarious and is thrilled that the path has been cleared for reckless driving, which he promptly proceeds to engage in. I am a bit bothered by what we just witnessed and start asking, what the fuck do you think happened to that guy? What if we just saw something really bad, like that dude's last moments in this world? Friend doesn't give a fuck, he's just happy to have the other driver out of the way. I'm pretty unnerved by that for a while, and get uneasy when I go on Bigelow Gulch. Twice over the next 2 weeks while driving on the western part of Bigelow, I see this nuclear green glow coming from off to the side of the road above the tree line. This happens in 2 different locations and just pops out of nowhere both times. Not having any of that, both times I just speed the fuck on and don't look back.
Not woods, but bog. But still counts out. Walking on the moor, South England. Early evening and fog is just starting to roll in. Come to a boggy area. Real nice strong peat smell in the air. Watching where I'm going so I don't trip or fall into the bog. Someone got sucked in and died last year. It has been raining for a few days, which usually stirs up the bog, and stuff often floats to the surface or gets pushed up by some change in density in the bog mud. Not sure, I'm not a geologist. So to be honest, I probably went for a walk that day on the off chance I might see a body get brought up by the rain. Thought it might make a good story. Fog is getting thicker. Trip over a big rock, sticking out of the mud. Swear for a while. Tear in my trouser leg, and a little blood. Look over to what I tripped on. Rusty metal corner sticking out of the ground. Assume somebody dumped a fridge or a washing machine out in the moor. Too heavy to be brought up by the rain, so dirt must have been washed off it, and it's been uncovered. Look at it for a second, clearly not a fridge. Walk over to it and test the ground. Pretty solid. Thing is rusted completely, looks like pig iron or something. Then turned completely orange by the bog, or the rain. Wipe more mud off. It's so clearly not a fridge that I'm curious as hell. Think maybe I found an engine block from an aircraft, or something like that. Some World War II relic. Spend about half an hour wiping away mud and digging around the sides. Thing is about 2 feet tall, by 1.5 by 1.5 feet. No joins or seams, just a big rusty solid block of metal from what I can see. On one side is a circle. Looks like a stone carving, in that it's set about half an inch deep into the block. Stand up. Fog has closed in around me. Can see a blue light bobbing up and down about 3 feet off the ground, maybe 10 yards away from me. Assume it's a keyring on somebody's bag, probably a hiker. Call out. Blue light carries on bobbing up and down like somebody walking. Yell a bit louder, thinking it might be my dad come looking for me. Notice more blue lights. First thought is that it's a hiking group, and the blue lights are some safety precaution against getting lost in the fog. Notice more and more. It can't be a group because they're not all in a cluster. They're all around me. Blue lights bobbing up and down in every direction I look. Check it's not my eyes playing tricks on me. Think it might be sunspots or some vision thing from crouching for too long. The lights move when I turn my head. So they're there. I'm not mad. Lights all around me. The same blue as when you turn a Bunsen burner on high, bobbing up and down. At this point, I start to get scared. Fog muffles noise and doesn't let it carry very far, but I swear I can hear whispering or giggling. Try to tell myself that this is somebody screwing with me. Suddenly, one of the blue lights shoots about 10 yards to the left in less than a second. Shit's scared now. This isn't people. More and more of the lights start to zip about, keeping about 3 feet off the ground mostly. A few bob up to about 5 feet then back. Bend down and grab a clod of mud and throw it at one of the lights. No result. Yell a bit more. Forget this. They're zipping about quite a bit now. Spot a gap a few yards wide in the lights. Run as fast as I can for it. Trip over a few times. Covered in mud, swearing under my breath, and my heart feels like it's going to burst out of my chest. Run until I have a stitch. Stop and look back the way I came. Can't see or hear anything. Fog is pea soup thick. Walk as fast as I can. come off the moor in completely the wrong place, as I just ran in a random direction. Had to walk 5 miles along a road to get home. Locked my door. Didn't pluck up the courage to go walking out there until a week later in the middle of the day in total sunshine and no chance of encroaching fog. Can't find the place where I was, with the metal thing. Probably been covered up by shifting mud or it's sunk into the ground, loosened from where I dug with my hands. Still to this day, won't go out on the moor after 4 p.m.
My family came from a very small town on the Mexican border of South Texas and has seen what can only be described as Mothman or some prehistoric bird. I have 2 stories to tell. Both taking place in the 70s when Mothman was doing shit. Greentext cuz space. Nighttime. Grandma hears noises coming from outside. Sounds like trash can being fucked with. Thinks coyote or javelina. Looks out window. Sees what looks like a shadow of a man hunched over. See that it has no head. Looks like a wide penguin with no head and waddles like one. It looks at her with red eyes from its chest. Freaks out and waddle runs away, knocking the garbage cans down. Next day an elderly couple had a car crash and the man died. Old woman claimed he had a heart attack because he saw a red-eyed demon cross the street. Other people saw it too, digging in their garbage. Mystery till this day. Lechuza could be what was seen. It's like the picture except the wings weren't out. Lechuza is half human half owl. Maybe it couldn't fly and that would explain the waddling. Anyway, other story. Grandma used to be a house nurse for an old man who lived in a cottage by her house. Would go every morning to bring breakfast and medicine and care for him. One cold morning she went out like usual and saw a large prehistoric looking bird with eyes that seemed to pop out of its head. It just stared at her. It stayed sitting on a branch for a few days, just watching her go back and forth about her business. It was as big as a human stooping. And then it flew away.
It was the strangest sound I had ever heard, the sound that tore me out of my peaceful sleep. It was a sound that chilled me to the bone as I laid in the otherwise quiet darkness. It sounded unnatural, something that could never be made by any living creature. The best way I could describe it would be a gurgled, sobbing howl similar to the cry of the insane often heard at a madhouse. The sound lasted for a few seconds, even though it felt like hours, before giving way to an almost inaudible muttered whispering. Naturally, I was terrified, but the morbid curiosity got the best of me and I decided I had to investigate it. Determining the sound came from the garage, I grabbed a baseball bat and slowly and as quietly as possible worked my way downstairs. The closer I got to the garage door, the more muffled words I could make out, such as "help me" or "make it stop." However, as soon as I was inches away from the door, the whispering just stopped and left the house in an extremely unsettling silence. I grabbed a flashlight off of a table, unlocked the garage door, and swung it open. I searched around the garage with my flashlight, finding nothing. Feeling rather disappointed and quite frightened, I was about to leave when a black shape was caught in the light. I held the light on it as best I could, as my hands were shaking, and let my eyes adjust to see what it was. It appeared to be a man crouched down, clutching his head and staring at the floor while rocking back and forth slightly. Not sure what to do, I called out to the man to ask him what he was doing in my house. The thing that was crouched down seemed to blur out of focus for a second, and it stopped rocking back and forth. A soft sobbing sound came from the creature, and it began to spasm and seize up violently. In the blink of an eye, it stood up, but was still facing away from me. I slowly walked towards it, my legs trembling, and tapped it on the shoulder. It twisted its head in a horrific pose to face me, and a sense of extreme nausea and dread came over me. Had no pupils, mouth, or nose. I stared into its empty white eyes for what seemed, and probably was hours until I came to a realization. This thing that I had found crouched down in my garage was a living testament to everything wrong in the world. It is the personification of the unnatural, pure fury of life. My soul was screaming at me to look away, to hide, and to run. But I could not. As the sun rose, the creature faded away along with the darkness, leaving me a shattered, broken man. My sanity had slipped away from me, and I was found weeks later by a mental institution. Don't worry, the padded room is comforting to me, although I still see that horrible thing in my dreams. They all say I'm mad. I wish that was the case, but sadly, I have a stronger grip on reality than any other.
This reminds me of something that happened to me and my friends when I used to live at a reservation in Northern California. A lot of weird shit happened there. I have a bunch of stories, but this one brought back memories. B10. Siblings and kids from the neighborhood play hide and seek. I hide in a bush. Watch as one of my friend's older sisters hides near me behind a redwood tree. Waiting. All of a sudden, friend's sister starts screaming. I look. Can't see exactly what she's screaming at. Just saw a glimpse of something pale and flesh-colored run away. Looked like a shaved rabbit or something. She's still screaming. Covering her face and hands and backing away. Friend comes to aid of his sister. Asks what is wrong. Still screaming. Ended up bringing her into the house. Finally got her to calm down. Parents told everyone to go home for the day. We found out a few days later what she saw. She swears, to this day, that she heard a baby cry, and when she looked around the tree to where it was coming from, she saw a naked baby crawling at her without a head. We since have moved from the res, but parts of my family still live there and weird things continue to happen.
We all have those hotels that are abandoned in our town. You know, that one you pass on a daily basis and think nothing of it. Have any of you been daring enough to take a peek inside? I once have and have never thought of the idea again. Let me go back 3 months to the very night I was brave enough to set foot in the old, grimy, broken down hotel. I was up late thinking of shit to do. And couldn't. I had the urge to go outside and just do something. Anything just to stop myself from going insane. After thinking about where to go or what to do, I remembered that hotel. I remembered how I got the chills just from driving by and just looking at it. Caved-in roof, broken windows, no living grass or living anything for that matter surrounding it. After my decision, I got in my old rusty car Grand Marquis and started driving to the hotel. It was about a 15-minute drive from where I lived to get there. The whole way my emotions were excited, scared, and nervous about what I would eventually get to see in there. I truly expected to see nothing except dusty, broken, and non-usable furniture. When I finally arrived, I parked in the back of the hotel so no one would call the cops for breaking and entering. When I arrived, the place seemed off, to say the least. The hotel up close at night was very eerie to the look. It looked like a murderer's playground. I noticed it was not windy at all the moment I arrived. It was the whole way there with my windows down in my car at every single stop sign. I turned on my flashlight and walked over to the side door that was broken at the hinge and was moved to the side at the bottom. It looked like maybe some teenagers decided to use the hotel as a quick hookup place. As I entered, I get the overwhelming sense of having eyes placed on me. The smell of the place was just as bad as it looked. Like old milk fused with rotten eggs. I guess they decided to not clear out the fridges before they got everyone out. I started walking around looking at what was left behind from the previous owners of the place. As I assumed some trashed furniture, old china silverware, and some used condoms. The more I walked around, the more the sense of, get the hell out of here, became more intense. I just ignored it and decided to look in the drawers to see if anyone left anything behind, like money or valuables. As I was snooping around, I heard something scuffle around on the dusty wooden floors behind me. As I turned around, a flashlight exposed a shit ton of dust in the air and I could only see about 2 feet away. I started to move towards the door to get some fresh air, but as I was getting close I heard what sounded like metal scraping on concrete. I got to the door I entered from. I know it was the right door because I followed my footsteps from the dust and found the door to be completely closed. I assumed someone came over, saw my car, and put the door back in place to scare the shit out of me. It was working pretty good so far. I tried to smash myself into the door to open it, but it would not budge. Like it was bolted to the wall. The air finally started to clear of all the dust and I walked back to where the drawer was to find my way out another door. I looked over where I thought the sound came from and I saw what looked like some slimy shit on the floor. It reeked of that horrid smell I mentioned earlier. I backed the hell up and into the drawer. On the top, written in the dust, was "Sorry" with a photo. It looked like it was taken in the 70s. Kind of an eyesore, but able to see what it was showing. The photo displayed a male, looked like he was in his 20s, and it looked like he had multiple wounds and cuts in his upper body, including his face. Behind him, I could barely make out what looked like a completely pale figure. It was scrawny looking, and from what it looked like, its only features were eyes that were black on the surroundings and completely white inside. Blood and green/yellow pus like liquid drooling from this thing's mouth. As I picked the picture up to get a better view of it, I was overwhelmed with that smell. The picture had the same slime underneath it as I had found on the ground. I then heard some of the furniture move behind me and some screwed up gargling howling sound. As I turned around, I could not see anything due to all the dust in the air again. I then heard from outside what sounded like a banshee, except much higher pitched. I ran towards the front of the hotel and could hear the sound following me. It was getting closer every second that passed. There was no way I would outrun whatever the hell was chasing me, so I decided to jump out of one of the windows I was about to pass. Glass had cut up and penetrated my arms and chest. Full of fear and adrenaline, there was no way I was ready to lay there and die. I ran to where my car was and got in. I tried to start my car, but the gauge for my fuel was reading empty. That mother lover that locked me in took my gas. I then saw the face of that terrifying creature peek around the corner. Now I could see every feature of it. It was constantly smiling and staring directly at me. It had jagged, broken, and bloody teeth. Ears that were only holes on the side of its head. Its eyes, though, they were soulless, unreal, and terrifying to even look at. I tried to start my car once more, looking at the gauge, and still nothing. I looked back and it was standing at my car. It was standing in an unnatural position. One leg was taller than the other by at least a half foot and looked like it was placed backwards. One leg bent forward and the other to the side. Its long lanky arms looked like it had many broken and out-of-place bones. I tried yet again to start my car and get the hell out of there, but it was not going to start. As I looked back to see where it was, our eyes met at my passenger window and sounded like it was trying to say, "Please come outside. I just want to play." It sounded like it was just mimicking what someone has said. But not a very good imitation. It then said, "Help me," over and over, also making that horrid noise it had earlier. I reached under my seat to grab my trusty bat, got out of the car, ran towards the creature as he came towards me, and smashed it right in the head a good 3 or 4 times. It laid there twitching and spazzing out for a few seconds, then, to my horror, was starting to get back up again. I could not believe it was getting up again. I had to have crushed that thing's skull easily. I started to swing away again and decided to haul ass back home, keeping the bat in my hands. I got about 100 to 150 feet away and looked back. It was standing there staring at me from the edge of the road and screamed, "I'll see you soon." I ran like a biatch for about 15 to 20 minutes and walked the rest of the way home. My bat was covered in that thing's blood, mucus-like, pus-like shit that was in the hotel. It's been about 3 months and I've lost a lot of sleep and installed a security system just for safe measures. I rarely go outside anymore, and there's no way in hell that I'd go outside at night again. I sometimes at night hear the sound of it screech and it saying, "Come outside." I haven't been brave enough to look outside my windows. When this does happen, the next day there is the slime all around my house. This is a warning to all you adventurous people. Whatever you do, do not explore abandoned houses, hotels, or buildings. It's not worth a lifetime of fear. END.
Murray put down the camera and wiped the snowflakes off of his binoculars, holding them up to his blue eyes. He spun the focus and tried to shield the lenses from the driving wind as he gazed out across the icy plains. He lost feeling in his hands after only a minute of searching. It was hopeless anyways. The driving snow obscured anything over a few hundred yards away. Sighing, he lowered the binoculars and put his gloves back on, turning to face me. "No way we can get back to the Jeep in this stuff," he said. "The blizzard's gonna be on top of us within an hour, and we better have some shelter by then." I struggled to hear him over the shrieking wind. What? No, we have to get back. We're supposed to be shooting the next segment in St. Petersburg on Wednesday. If we don't start driving tonight, we'll never get back on schedule. You're worried about the filming schedule? Murray gave me stern look. You've never been in a Siberian blizzard, have you? If we get caught on those open plains when the storm hits, we'll freeze to death in 10 minutes. Screw the schedule. I'm worried about making it through the night. I knew Murray well. He wasn't the kind of guy who exaggerated. If he said we were in trouble, he truly meant that our lives were in danger. Well, crap. Screw the schedule then. What do we do now? Even as I spoke, I could feel the freezing wind gusting stronger, little jets of ice shooting through the seams in my parka and chilling me to the bone. Murray had to yell to be heard over the gathering snowstorm. Let's head back to that forest we passed earlier. We can pile some branches and try to make a shelter before the worst of it reaches us. All right, Mur, you lead the way. I already feel half frozen. Without further discussion, we set off back across the snow-laden fields, me struggling to follow Murray as the driving gale buffeted me about, thick sheets of snow blocking out the golden evening sun and the dark shadow of my cameraman hurriedly trudging along before me. By the time we reached the first line of trees, the sun had set and the storm had begun to attack us in earnest. As we marched deeper into the forest, I began to appreciate the sense of fear that this storm had given Murray. Never before in my life had I been so cold. Although I was running as fast as I could over snowbanks, burdened by 30 pounds of cold weather clothing, I had already lost all feeling in my feet. Just over the howling of the wind blowing through the trees, I could hear him yelling back to me, "Deeper, deeper, we have to keep going. We have to go deeper into the forest." And so I half ran, half stumbled behind him as the numbing cold slowly crept along my skin and the sky grew darker and the drifting snow fell thicker. 45 minutes later, and I had lost all sense of reality. The white flurry blanketed all sounds, obscured my vision. The bitter wind clouded my brain and froze my muscles. I forgot why I was running. I forgot that I was running. I forgot who I was supposed to be following. All that existed was my thoughts and the swirling blackness. I could have run like this for hours or minutes and not known the difference. Time had stopped. The cold froze my thoughts and stung my eyes. It even stopped my watch, delicate fingers of ice stretching over the hands and freezing them in place. I have no idea how long I ran within those dark woods until a sudden flash of thought stopped me in my tracks. Gasping for breath, even as the frigid air seared my lungs, I realized that I had no idea where I was. Murray had disappeared into the night. I stood there bewildered, a creeping sense of doom slowly crawling across my dulled mind. I had no idea where Murray was. Hell, I had no idea where I was. What was I supposed to do now? Trudge onwards and try to find him, or attempt to make a shelter and survive the night by myself? It dawned on me that I had no idea how to make a shelter, and without Murray I would doubtlessly die. A rescue party eventually finding me frozen to a tree, half buried in the glimmering snow, my black lips drawn open over a blue face. But a hopeless rush to find my partner would be just as deadly. In the night I could never hope to find him. Eventually I would just collapse under my numb feet, quickly dying where I had fallen. And then suddenly, unexpectedly, I beheld a wonderful sight. Two glittering blue eyes swimming out of the darkness, a hand reaching down and pulling me to my feet. "Get up, you idiot. You want to die?" Murray brushed the snow off my back. "Come on, big-time reporter. There's something I want you to see." He grabbed onto my shoulders and dragged me through the forest. As the cold swept in around me, I felt my eyelids falling, the last of my strength seeping from my tired body. But just as I fell asleep, Murray whacked me on the top of the head. "Wake the hell up, you lazy bastard. I found shelter. Check this place out." I blinked and rose unsteadily to my feet. Before me was a clearing in the woods. A minuscule amount of moonlight filtered down through the swirling clouds and the dancing canopy to illuminate two large structures squatting in a grove. The first was an old cottage, its wooden siding close to rotting off. The walls slanted at an angle, the middle of the roof sunken down. It looked like only the heaps of snow piled against it kept it standing up. No light came from its cobwebbed windows. As for the other object, I had to shake my head and ask Murray if it was real to convince myself it wasn't a hallucination. Towering above the dingy house, a cross was planted near the front door. It was wooden, Catholic Eastern Orthodox style, but of a very basic design, rotting boards hastily nailed together and stuck upright into the ground. If it wasn't for its massive height, the cross would have been completely unremarkable. Clearly, it was almost as old as the house. The main post was sagging over at a severe angle, as if the base of the cross had begun to rot away. But its size and its decay paled in comparison to the overall impression it seemed to give off, a strange vibe of foreboding. As I stared upwards at it, I felt a shiver creep down my back that had nothing to do with the cold. This cross wasn't an indication of salvation, it wasn't a marker for sanctuary. This cross was a warning, a sentinel telling wanderers to run away, far away. As a wave of oppression swept out from the dark structures, I felt a pat on the back. "Yeah, I know what you're thinking," said Murray in a quiet voice. "I don't like this place either, but it's the only way we'll last the night. Come on, there's something I want to show you." He led me up to the house, past the crooked cross as the storm blew in again with renewed fury, blotting out the moonlight and hiding the wooden sentinel from sight. We climbed up a broken set of steps and reached the front door. Murray pulled out a flashlight. "I need you to take a look at this. Your Russian is better than mine." He illuminated the door. Nailed to it was a large wooden plaque covered in worn Russian writing. Just below that, a rusted dagger was thrust deep into the wood, bifurcating a single word that had been gouged into the door itself. Murray shined his light at me. "So, Jim, what's it say?" I squinted at the decayed wood. "I'm not sure. It's worn out pretty good." Running my fingers along the writing, I tried to feel the letters cut into the plaque. These big ones on the top are easy. They basically say, "Warning, do not enter." I'm not completely sure what's written right beneath that. I can't read some of the words, and the rest doesn't make that much sense. I think it's supposed to read, "The old woman still lives here. Stay away." But, obviously no one's lived here for dozens of years. What about the word in the door? The one with the knife stuck in it? The word is Vedma, but I have no idea what that means. As for the knife, it's got a little cross carved into the handle. Looks pretty fancy. If it wasn't all rusted up, it might be worth something. I don't know, Mur. I've got no idea what this means. Does this make any sense to you? Murray gave me a strange look. I could see his blue eyes reflected in the flashlight, his eyebrows raised quizzically. "You know, it kind of does. But first things first, let's get inside before we freeze to death." It took a couple of good hits, but together we were able to overcome the rusted hinges. A shower of splinters flew from the lock as we stumbled into the dark house. Without hesitation, Murray slammed the door shut behind us. Instantly, I felt warmer. It was freezing cold in the cottage, but at least there was no wind. With the feeble light from Murray's flashlight, we retreated to a corner to check our condition. As I sat down, I could feel the rotten floorboards sagging beneath me. Once it was apparent that neither of us was dying of hypothermia or suffering severe frostbite, Murray began to shuffle around in his backpack for the camping light. As he set up the light, he told me what he thought about the place, the cross, and the writing. It all made sense when you said Vedma. I might not be able to read Russian as well as you can, Jim, but I know a lot more about Eastern European culture. Vedma is a really archaic term meaning the one who noses. Basically, it's a derogative term for a hag that lives in the forest. Historically, any old hermit that decided to live out in the wilderness was labeled a wizard or a hag. Usually, they were just people with bad mental disorders or just loners who preferred the wild life. Unfortunately, Russian peasants were a pretty superstitious lot, so any misfortune visited upon a town, say a bad crop or a plague of disease, was blamed upon the local hag. It was pretty common for a gang of vigilantes wielding stereotypical pitchforks and torches to come after and kill these people. According to tradition, you had to bury their body underneath a cross to prevent their spirit from coming back and haunting the forest. Murray lit the lamp and light flooded across the room. Traveling across the world, I've stayed at some pretty damn creepy places, but this cottage took home the bronze, silver, and gold. Although the propane lamp sitting on the floor was usually so bright that one could read by it, here it barely illuminated a single room. The harsh white light spread outwards across what was once a living room, casting long shadows across broken and rotten furniture. As soon as the warm glow hit a wall, it seemed to stop. I can't really describe it better. It was almost as if the ancient wood was sucking in the light, leaving the two long hallways on the other end of the room pitch black. With every movement, we cast up clouds of dust. Every step caused a rain of mold to fall from the rafters above. Murray cautiously walked across the creaking floor to peer into the two dark rooms. "One's a bedroom," he yelled back, "and one's a kitchen. They both look pretty grody. I'm not sure if the floor could take our weight. We better sleep in this room for the night." I nodded my agreement, and we collapsed back into the corner with the lamp. Curling into a ball, I felt warmer than I had in hours. As I drifted off to sleep, I saw Murray turning off the lamp. It was the heat that woke me. When I had fallen asleep, I was barely warm enough to feel all of my extremities. Now I was so hot that I was literally drenched in sweat. As I stripped off my outer jacket, I noticed that the room was lit by a flickering orange light. A roaring fire was blazing in the crumbled stone fireplace. Now, I trusted Murray. After all, he had saved my life. But it seemed like a stupid idea to light a fire in a house that was close to falling apart. I turned to face him and saw his blue eyes glowing from the dark corner of the room. "Hey man," he asked me, "did you light that fire?" "No, didn't you?" "Wasn't me." "Don't screw around with me right now. Did you light that fire?" "I swear it wasn't me." "Then who the hell was it?" "I don't." "What the hell is that?" I turned and stared off into the dancing shadows. In the narrow entryway, a shadowy form stood hunched over. It rose about 4 feet off the ground and had the texture of mildewed rags, like a pile of laundry that had been left to decay for years. Was it swaying back and forth, or was that just the firelight playing tricks? What the hell? Murray was slowly creeping towards the door. "Let's get the hell out of here." I couldn't take my eyes off the strange figure standing just barely in the living room. It was definitely moving. It was walking, hobbling, across the floor towards us. As it moved further into the room, the firelight splashed across its face, or at least the half of a face it had. Bent double underneath its tattered robes, the thing's head emerged from the layers of rot at about chest height. Its skin was peeling off in patches, dripping from the scalp. It was bleached white except for patches stained a deep red. From the left side of the face, a blank white, I peered at us from above torn blue lips. Worms burrowed around under the skin, bursting from holes and falling onto the decayed floorboards. The right side was completely missing, just shattered bones pieced together. Thin red nerves tangled with bits of dripping gray tissue hung from the empty eye socket. The jaw was gone. A hole ran down the length of the neck, back into the folds of clothes that hung around the thing. I was frozen in spot as it slowly stumbled across the floor towards us. Lengths of intestine and organs spilled out from its robes, dragging along the rotten floorboards. As it neared us, a hand green with rot emerged from beneath the folds of clothes. In its skeletal fingers, it grasped the knife that had been stuck into the door. Gurgling and spouts of blood flowed from the hole in its punctured throat. Soon it was within arm's length of me, spluttering, swaying, brandishing the rusted knife towards my face. The smell of something long dead, something buried for decades, filled my nostrils. Something grabbed my shoulder. It was Murray. The spell was broken. As fear flooded through my veins, I felt my body stumble to the door, open it, and run back into the dark forest. As we tore past the cross, I noticed that it was completely uprooted. A dark hole yawned up from where it once stood, piles of bones and rotten flesh spilling out onto the snow, staining it red. I ran for so long into that dark forest. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew that whatever terror I faced in the darkness was better than what stumbled towards me in that cabin. Tree branches lashed out at me like clawed hands. Roots and bushes reached up and grabbed my ankles, pulling me to the ground. I lost track of Murray. I ran for hours into oblivion. Each brief time I stopped, I swear that I could hear that slow shuffling right behind me, and the smell of something long buried would cloud my brain. I passed out after running for hours on end. The next thing I remember was waking up in an intensive care unit in Moscow 3 weeks later, a doctor staring down at me. He told me that 2 hunters had found me stumbling through the woods in the early morning. I was completely out of my mind, screaming at them, trying to claw their faces off. I was lucky to be alive, he said. Frostbite claimed part of my ear and 3 toes, but other than that I was expected to make a full recovery. A week later they found Murray. A doctor came into my room to tell me that he was dead. He asked me if I wanted to hear the details. I said yes. Apparently the searchers had found his corpse leaning against a tree. He had died of cold before the storm lifted. By the time the rescuers had got to him, his body had been picked apart by scavengers. Something, probably a pack of wolves, had eaten off part of his face and ripped into his abdominal cavity. That was it. That would have been closure, would have given me a little peace. But the last day I was in the hospital, the night before I left for the States, one more person came to see me. He nervously ran his fingers through his hair as he sat down. He said that he was the coroner who had led Murray's dissection. He said that some men from the government had threatened him, made him put down certain things on the official death report and leave out others. But before I left, he wanted to reveal a few things to me personally. Murray did not die from cold. He was frozen, yes, but he was killed long before that. My prognosis is that he died from massive blood loss and shock from grievous bodily damage. Murdered, essentially. Someone pinned him down and cut into his chest. After he was incapacitated, they carved off the right portion of his face with a very sharp knife. This was done with a high degree of skill and precision. I do not accuse you of anything, Mr. Young, nor do I want to hear about what really happened. I just wanted to tell you the truth. He left. That night, I had a dream of a man wearing gloves trying to suffocate me. Behind him, a pile of filthy robes rocked back and forth. Issuing from its folds a horrible laughter. Now, I am back at my own house, but I do not feel safe. I keep glimpsing something creeping by the windows. I can't go to work. I can barely muster the courage to venture out to feed myself. As I lie in my bed, I hear a soft shuffling wandering through the room. Someone knocked on the door. When I opened it, I found the rusted knife stuck into the wood. Beneath it was gouged Vedma. The next time I heard a knock, I looked out through the peephole. A glittering blue eye stared back at me. People look at me oddly. Sometimes they blink, and their eyes will change, one blank white, one sapphire blue. The dreams continue. The man with gloves has come into view. He has Murray's face. As he strangles me to death, I can see the hatred in his face. He repeats himself again and again. Vedma, 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 until I die. In public, I hear people whispering it behind my back. In hushed voices, they point accusing fingers at me. Vedma. They whisper, with venom in their voice. Vedma. I don't answer the door anymore. I don't answer the phone, though it rings constantly. The blinds are all drawn, the windows bolted shut. The whole house reeks of death and rot. The smell drifts down from the attic, but I don't dare find out why. At night, I dream of men in suits and crosses and rotting corpses. Sometimes I wake up with that damned knife in my hands, dripping of blood. Something has taken over the living room. I have bolted the door shut, but still it speaks to me. Is it laughing or is it crying? How does it know my name? How does it know the name of my friends, my family? Why can't I remember what it tells me to do? Why do I wander through my house, gouging the same words again and again into the walls and the cabinets and into my own skin?
Erase a modern one. Loyon was an unknown person who lived in the woods of Switzerland. Loyon could be seen moving through the trees, or across paths and clearings. Sometimes he would follow people or watch them from afar, then retreat if they were too close. Loyon was once reported picking flowers along a path. Loyon wore a boiler suit, a cloak, and a gas mask. Eventually, people started to look for Loyon. This was too much for him or her. Loyon left a self-end note stating that he or she did not like the attention they were getting. Loyon left the gas mask along with the note. Nobody knows who Loyon was, or his or her gender. There are many theories of what Loyon wanted and did, but all we know is they never meant anyone harm. This is the only confirmed photo of the elusive.
Happened to a friend of my grandfather's. Grandparents live in a small town in NorCal. Not small enough for everyone to know everybody, but small enough to where you'll at least recognize faces. One of their friends was another older guy who loved hunting. Guy's been hunting for about as long as he could hold a gun. Used to go hunting in a woods, but now that he's older he stays more local. One day, he goes out hunting for deer. Sees a buck from the top of a hill and drops it with his rifle. He starts down the hill to get it and stops. From behind a tree, a large hairy hand grabs the deer by its neck and drags it behind the tree, where it disappears. Tree is not thick enough to hide much more than a squirrel, let alone a whole deer. Grandpa's friend, to his credit, does not panic right then and there, just turns right around and walks back to his car, where he then freaks out because he's sure he saw Bigfoot. Tells everyone the next night at the bar what he saw. Everyone gives him shit, the usual LOL, drink too much and I'll have what he's having. This goes on for a few months before he just shuts up and stops talking about it. Never went hunting again because he's scared of what might be out there. Grandpa and Grandma are the only ones who believe him. Consequently believe that Bigfoot is a transdimensional spirit. As a side note, the same grandparents who believe that Bigfoot is a trans-dimensional spirit being also refused to read Harry Potter or watch the movies back when it was in full swing because it was antithetical to their Christian values.
Mine is super dumb. 5th grade, me and my brother's birthday party, twins. Having a sleepover with our friends. Decide to go Bigfoot hunting at night because we're kids and my house is in the middle of the woods. We go out at around 10. We group up in about the middle of the fairly large backyard trying to come up with a plan. We start hearing a bunch of shit in the woods around us. Mostly branches breaking and shit, but it was fairly loud, even hear something that sounded like a grunt. Sounds are coming mainly from 2 directions at different points in the woods around us. We are all scared shitless and decide to go back inside after about 10 minutes. We line up on the stairs to the back door. I'm the last one in line. I look back behind me towards the woods as the first guy opens the door and see what looks like a huge hairy leg under the tree lean. It looked as if there was a very long-legged hairy man walking behind the trees, and I could only make out its leg stepping in and out of visibility. For some reason I decide not to tell the others. I think I told myself that my mind was playing tricks on me. I have other paranormal stories from.
I was daydreaming and imagined an astronaut that wakes up to find that his ship is being devoured and dragged into a red region of space. As he floats through it, he loses all communication and comes across a vast bloody red planetoid which he decides to land on to figure the situation out. In the distance he noticed what looked like another landing craft, so he decides to go out and investigate. As he exits his craft, he is immediately struck with this ambient music along with what seems like loud shrieking and roars that made him feel dizzy and disoriented. He makes his way to the other craft and noticed that it was an older USSR space landing craft. Upon entering it, he noticed a fossilized skeleton laying lifeless in a decaying, rotted out spacesuit lost in the darkness of this strange void. Next to him he noticed a file folder titled Operation Red Death. Inside he discovered page upon page of how the USSR fully knew about this region of space and sent several probes and missions out to this very spot in hopes of collecting samples of the mysterious red essence. When one of the samples came back, they realized it caused hallucinations and mentally broke down anyone who had the unfortunate favor of making contact with it. The Soviets, amazed with this strange substance, planned on extracting numerous batches of it in hopes of designing a new kind of weapon of mass destruction, one that destroyed life with something other than radiation. As the Soviets dumped millions upon millions of dollars into this weapons program, time caught up with them and their mighty USSR collapsed. Silent whispers snapped the astronaut back into reality as he spun around to find what looked like a person walking over a nearby hill waving for him to follow. He quickly ran, only to have the shrieks grow more and more explosively louder as he attempted to catch up, but the figure seemed to have mysteriously vanished. As he reached the top of the hill, his eyes widened and jaw dropped as he looked out to see what looked like an ocean of corpses screaming in pure agony. He dropped to his knees as his head became painful and visions of horror flashed through his mind which seemed to bring him closer to insanity with each and every frightful turn. He slowly turned around to see a creature but was unable to make it out as the creature appeared blurry like television static, and it seemed like his mind couldn't comprehend or grasp the complex supernatural thing that it was looking at. The creature just laughed as it pushed him down into the endless sea of bodies, and he screamed as they dragged him further into the depths of roaring flesh. It became clear that what we considered hell wasn't a flaming pit in the ground. It was above our heads the entire time. There was no eternal damnation because in this place time didn't exist. There was no agonizing endless physical pain. There was horrific psychological suffering that made you thirst for pain and death in hopes to end your existence entirely. The Soviet Union didn't find a hidden region filled with potential weapons of mass destruction. They found the location of hell.